All right. Call to order the Board of Directors meeting for Whatcom Transportation Authority, May 15th, 2025. Let's start with roll call, please.
All right, Donovan.
Here.
Hawkinson.
Here.
Forsyth.
Here.
Ottenbach.
Here.
Lund.
Here.
Sadhu. We do have Executive Sadhu
Here.
online. Is Mary Lou Stewart online? I'm not seeing.
I'm not seeing her.
Okay, absent at the moment. Darwin
Present.
and Board Member Williams and Lily Quist are absent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item C, employee recognition. Quite a few of them.
Yeah, it's a party. It is a party. It's a party here. Good morning, everybody. All stand up. Good morning. This is one of my favorite aspects of what we get to do at our board meetings. And today we have 3 operations employees that are all celebrating their 30 years of service to Whatcom County and with WTA. And I'd like to first bring up Janet Meyer. I have had the opportunity to work with Janet very closely for the last 10 years, but for my 20 years at WTA. And if there's anything that has happened at WTA in operations, Janet has done it. Janet started as a transit operator, very quickly was selected to be a terminal expediter, moved into the dispatch work center where she worked for 13 years. Joined the operations management team as an operations supervisor, then took over as our dispatch supervisor and is now our dispatch manager. Everything that she has done, she's done with excellence, with care for the WTA mission and care for the people that carry out that mission. She has a deep heart for what we do and how we serve the community, as evidenced by the amount of ways that she has served this agency and served the community through that. In the midst of that, she has been twice WTA's Employee of the Quarter, which is awesome, and one time elected by the ATU, our union representatives, as the Shirley Petty Award winner, which embodies the ATU spirit and the WTA spirit, elected by her peers for that as well. And she's just reminded me, because I can't read on the screen, it's tiny, that she was also the WTA Goodwill Ambassador. She's just done it all and done it all with excellence. And that's what makes it so much harder that she is retiring in 22 days in June. So we miss you, we love you, we thank you so much for your service. As a pin that you can wear for 22 days. You gotta say something.
Okay. It's been great, a great 30 years. I've loved that I've had different jobs like every 10 years and stuff. It's kept it, just knowing the whole organization really has been really great. I love information. Before I came to WTA, I owned an espresso stand and would always give people information. And I always like that part about being a driver, being a dispatcher, helping my coworkers, helping staff and stuff like that. It's just been really a great career. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Janet, thank you. Well, you don't get to sit down because Mike's gonna come up next.
I'm going to grab.
You're gonna grab the next, all right.
Okay, come on, Mike. This is Mike Sutherland. He's a dispatcher, but he also started out as a paratransit driver. And then after 2 years went into paratransit dispatching. And he's been a certified trainer, trained the trainer, did a class training dispatchers, really great. So it was kind of a fun class. And some things about him, he showed up for COVID every day during COVID. He showed up for work. He's also been like the WTA rodeo photographer before. And you can see by his, he has, well, I wrote it down here because it was really, The photography, he's especially skilled at live shots, and you can see by his Eagles shot there. I thought those would be much bigger.
Trying to make it bigger.
They're not.
Do you have the mouse?
So.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so he's also, one thing about being a great dispatcher is he's really exceptional during bad weather and during crisis events, like when we're down on Paper. He's the guy you want next to him. He's really calm during those situations. He's started out on Paper, and we're not on Paper anymore. We have tablets and stuff like that. So, but whenever the system goes down, we have to revert back to Paper. And so it's really great having Mike there to know the system, and we work with CSRs, and sometimes Eric's involved, sometimes I'm involved, sometimes Crystal, the supervisor, is involved. Crystal's a supervisor, but I asked because I've worked next to Mike for so long to introduce him. So anyway, so he's a person you want by your side during events and stuff like that. Let's see. Some personal things about him. He's a stunning photographer. He has an extensive portfolio, and he's a proud dad, proud involved dad. And he's another important career accomplishment. He was an Army drill sergeant. He's a nice guy with a tough exterior. So whenever I needed to get Mike to do something or ask him to do something, I'd just say, "Hi, Mike, how you doing?" You know, and then I would like ask him to do something, and he, you know, his tough exterior would come out, but he always did what was asked. And he also is retiring 5 days before me. And I'm super excited for him that he's also getting to retire, and that he's been great to work next to when I was a dispatcher, and then having him now in the dispatch group. So thank you, Mike.
Okay.
My shirt's quiet.
And now I'll introduce Supervisor Ryan Kennedy and Jim.
So Jim Boyd's been an operator for 30 years. He got hired 30 years ago. Been driving, hired initially as a paratransit operator, driving the little buses, and has been since cross-trained over to driving the big buses. And one of his specialty is driving the 72X Kendall. He's been bidding that forever. One of the people that we go to the first when there's bad weather or something's going on out there, like, "Hey Jim, how's the roads looking? Is it doable?" We rely on his experience and his knowledge in the safe driving things. Speaking of safe driving, Jim Boyd has a 29-year consecutive safe driving record. On the road, he's in it, he's safe, he's interacting with his passengers well, he's really putting the face of the WTA out there that we want. Shortly after he was hired, he was a part-time, or not part-time, but a sub paratransit dispatcher for a while, interacting with the public and operators in that role in the dispatch center, specifically paratransit. I learned a lot from him when he was a driver, because I also drove the 72 for many years, and so he was kind of a mentor in many ways in that way. And you can see maybe with a little bit bigger, but Jim has had multiple different faces here. And when Jim's not driving a bus, you'll find him outdoors all the time. He's an avid hunter and camper and hiker. Loves the outdoors, loves Whatcom County, and we love having Jim here.
Sorry.
Love it.
Words?
Oh, not really. It's been good. been good having the same job for 30 years. And, go ahead.
No, I want to say one thing about Jim. We used to go to the same bus stop as kids, and so it's just funny. There's a lot of see home people. We all went to
Yeah.
see home and stuff like that. And it's just great having worked with Jim as a driver, and he'll come visit me in my office and stuff like that. And I just think it's so wonderful that we got to know each other better as adults and in our careers, during our job. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Congratulations, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone. Oh, just for the record, Mary Lou Stewart logged in just at the beginning of item C. Item D, legislative update. Hannah Jones.
Sure, I might just introduce Hannah while she's getting her slides ready. Hannah, as you probably recall, this is our first year with a contract lobbyist down in Olympia, and Hannah just proved her value right from the very get-go. She is gracious both in offense and defense, and that's really important to us, and that she's sort of an extension of staff down there with great relationships and a ton of knowledge, and I personally learned a lot from her, so I don't want to take away anything she's got to say, but I want to let you know how wonderful it's been to work with. All right, over to you, Hannah.
Great. Thank you so much. Give me just 1 second here while I figure out how to share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my PowerPoint. Let me know if not. Get slideshow started. As Maureen mentioned, thank you so much for the introduction. It's so good to be with you all. I know I've met a couple of the board members in Olympia, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to present to you all today about the 2025 legislative session. It's our first year working together, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll tell you, this is quite an eventful legislative session to be presenting on. Normally, it's there's not this much. If any of you have followed kind of what's been going on in the news. So I'll say this is probably a lot more a lot more to share than normal. So with that, I'm going to start with some general highlights about what happened. What were the general outcomes? So if you've followed any of the news about what the state was dealing with this year, then you'll know that the legislature was dealing with a $15 billion budget deficit in the operating budget. Essentially, spending has outpaced the revenue that is coming in. And that was something we knew, I want to say I think we started to get inklings about it last June. And then the number of billions that we were in the hole kept ticking up and up well into the first month or two of the legislative session. At a high level, generally, it kind of depends on who you ask about the reason for that uptick. But generally, the understanding is the underlying maintenance level budget faced some increases, right? That has to do with an increase in K-12 salaries. That has to do with new labor contract obligations. It also has to do with some COVID money going away, as well as inflation. So a number of factors played into the fact that the base level of the budget was quite honestly just a lot higher, required more funding this year than in the 23 budget. And that was really evident in the size of the box is kind of what we're calling it, that the legislature adopted. $77.8 billion was the size of the operating budget in comparison to the last biennial budget, which was right around $72 billion. We also saw the legislature adopted historic new revenue for both the operating and transportation budget, around $9 billion for the operating and over 4 years, and $3.2 billion for transportation revenue over a period of 6 years. It wasn't all new taxes. The legislature also pursued cuts. We knew early on in conversations with budget writers, the legislature was going to need to do both, make really hard decisions and reduce existing funding, and also pursue new revenue to backfill that, to get to that $15 billion number. And then, of course, the legislature debated and passed policy. Only 431 bills passed the legislature this year in comparison to nearly 2,400 that were introduced.
Hey, Hannah.
Oh.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yes,
is it
please.
possible that you are not in presenter mode? We might get a slightly bigger version of your presentation.
Could be. Very
You
well
are,
could
you just
be.
need to stop sharing and share the other window.
There we go.
Let me share the other window. Yes.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I'm glad you told me.
Thank you.
You can never tell with these screens. Is that better?
There
at
we
all?
go. Perfect.
Nice.
Okay, good. Good. I'm glad. Because this is the results page. I want you all to be able to see that. So as we had WTA had a very successful legislative session. When we started working together, right at the end of 24, beginning of 25, I had a great collaboration with Les and with Maureen, and determined that, your number one priority this session was going to be securing 500,000 for the Linden Station project, the affordable housing project. And that was successful. We were able to secure that amount of money from the capital budget. A couple of other priorities became clear as the legislative session wore on. We also, and I'll get to this in a little bit, but recognize that the biennial transportation budget was facing a significant shortfall as well. And so it became not only pursue this 500,000 for WTA, but also protect what we already have. So retaining the existing project schedule, as well as retaining existing transit grant programs. Happy to report that all of WTA's programmed funding was made whole. It stayed the same. There were no delays, which I can't say the same for a number of other jurisdictions who saw major projects delayed, funding even pushed out into the ambiguous future category, meaning we're not sure when you're going to get that funding, but it's pushed out into the future when we can appropriate it. So all positive there. And then the final is retaining existing transit grant programs. I've put that in yellow. It's probably closer to a yellow-green. For the most part, transit did really well and was able to maintain most funding. There were some cuts though. And so I'll get into that here later in my presentation with some more details there. Just at a very high level, so this session, it was the first in the 2-year cycle. So easy way to think about it is every odd numbered year is a long session. So 2025, 105 days. And it is the first in a 2-year cycle. So we think about the legislature in a 2-year period. So often you'll see, the biennial budget, for example, is referred to as the 25 to 27, meaning 25 and 26 legislative sessions are tied together. We had a historic number of new faces in Olympia, not only new legislators, we had 24 new members. We had 9 House members move over to the Senate, but we also had a new governor. We also had a new we also had a new insurance commissioner. We had a new attorney general. So a lot of changing dynamics well into the first few weeks of session. We also saw a number of legislators move on to higher office, receive appointments in the Ferguson administration. And so a number of those appointments occurred well into the first few weeks of the legislative session. And what that really means is that we have some special elections coming up here this November as folks try and retain the seats that they were appointed to. And the legislature had 2 primary tasks, as they do every first year of a 2-year cycle, which is develop and adopt biennial capital, operating, and transportation budgets, and then write, debate, and pass legislation. We saw, no surprise here, we saw Democrats continue to maintain strong majorities in both the House and Senate. We saw kind of an interesting context this year in both chambers where Democrats had a stronger majority than they've had in the past. And so as a result, they were able to change some rules on the House floor around debating and taking a simple majority vote to end debate. We also had, as I mentioned, the new governor. And as we're seeing, even I just saw an article like 5 minutes before I came on camera, new dynamics between the legislature and the governor. Right now, the governor is getting ready to sign bills or veto bills. And so he's been doing that since the end of session. The deadline is next Tuesday, and we still haven't heard from him whether he's going to sign the budgets, whether he's going to veto any of the revenue. So just continuing, these dynamics are continuing to unwind or figure themselves out here. And then because of that $15 billion shortfall in the operating budget combined with wider majorities, we saw a large interest from Democrats in pursuing not only new revenue solutions, but also solutions that would reverse the regressive tax system that we have in Washington state. And so we, from Senate Democrats, although this wasn't the final proposal that passed, we saw an introduction of a wealth tax, adoption of a wealth tax, and also a reduction in the state sales tax, right? State sales tax is largely thought to be more regressive, whereas a wealth tax, a property tax are thought to be more progressive solutions. And then, as I mentioned, we had a $1 billion shortfall in the transportation budget, and so we saw discussions advance, really robust discussions, not only about new revenue solutions for the transportation budget, but also about creating sustainability year over year, because this is not the first time we've been facing challenges in the transportation budget. Setting the stage here for what happened in the transportation space, because that is largely what WTA is thinking about in terms of what is going to impact you the most. We know that the primary reason for that shortfall in the operating budget is largely due to declining gas tax revenues. We heard repeatedly from budget writers this year that the gas tax revenue hit its peak in probably 2018, 2019, and since then has been steadily declining. So it was maybe not a total surprise, but certainly a bit shocking when it was determined that that $1 billion shortfall was going to hit the state this biennium. Transportation budget writers were not expecting that until at least maybe the next biennium or further down the line. And so we saw Representative Jake Fye, who's the chair of the House Transportation Committee, introduce the road usage charge, which is essentially a per mile fee that is intended to be somewhat revenue neutral with the gas tax, meaning let's say you're driving an electric vehicle, you're paying a road usage charge, you're not really paying gas tax. If you're paying the gas, if you're paying all gas tax, then your road usage charge is going to offset that in order to make that whole, to make the budget whole, basically. That proposal ultimately did not move forward, received a truly historic amount of scrutiny in terms of in public comment this year. So that did not move forward. We also saw more conversations about maintenance and preservation. Folks who want to see more investment in maintaining the infrastructure, the roads and bridges that we already have. And so we even saw a push by some transportation stakeholders, although it did not go forward, to shift some Climate Commitment Act dollars to maintenance and preservation. We also, this conversation about sustainability, as I mentioned, evolved throughout the session, right? It started out kind of as a road usage charge. We had some conversations about a package conversation, but ultimately we ended up with a recurring operating budget transfer transfer from the operating budget to the transportation budget and new revenue. We didn't see a lot of transit-specific policies this session, but a few that we did see that we were watching closely. One was the PTBA governance bill, which is a may, not a must, that two transit writers could be appointed or to join a PTBA board. The second would have been creating more stringent penalties or expanding the definition of a transit employee in terms of creating more safety and more ability to respond when safety is threatened for transit employees. And then finally, allowing private companies to utilize bus-only lanes. That was another interesting proposal that ultimately did not advance. Here's what passed. When we think about the transportation budget, there were, from my perspective, I would say three kind of primary principles that budget writers stuck to. One is finishing what we started, especially in the transit context. As I mentioned, for the most part, all transit projects were really maintained in terms of schedule and funding. And so there was really a focus on no new projects. Let's focus on what we've already funded in previous years and keep those projects moving forward. And then I would also say maintaining Washington State's commitment to transit. I thought that was very clear just because of the difference between different sectors where there wasn't as much investment. I would say transit overall stayed whole more than maybe others. Um, and then, as I mentioned, as part of this idea about creating sustainability within or stability within the transportation budget, we now are going to see an ongoing transfer of state sales tax from the operating budget to the transportation budget. 0.1% of the state's 6.5% sales tax is now going to move to the transportation budget on an annual basis in order to make sure that there is stability going into that budget, particularly in light of the fact that a road usage charge to replace declining gas tax revenue did not move forward. And then the governance bill 1418 just passed. In fact, it was signed by the governor earlier this week. And then finally, new revenue. And this slide is probably going to be pretty small and a little bit challenging to read. But what you'll see here is a number of new taxes and tax increases that were adopted this session in order to make sure that the transportation budget was able to fund basic needs, including keep the multimodal account whole, which transit mostly benefits from, and prevent major delays on most projects, even though there were some delays on some projects. And then I've just got a chart here to outline how transit fared at a high level. We saw overall, this is where that kind of stoplight at the beginning of the presentation comes in here. We saw, by far and away, transit really did well this session. The only areas where we saw reductions would be the Green Transportation Grant Program, which certainly is, a program that many agencies benefit from in terms of carbon emission reducing types of projects. So that faced a $17 million reduction. We also saw a 50% cut in public rideshare grants, and then transit coordination grants, which were only about $2 million, were eliminated entirely this session. We also, I would say kind of the last thing here is we saw some transit-specific provisos that are largely thought to be beneficial to public agencies that were included in both the transportation budget and the revenue bill. Some include permitting benefits for transit agencies. For example, if an agency performs an environmental analysis or other permitting analysis, then another local government cannot supersede that analysis if there's disagreement. Also, a designation of high capacity transportation as essential public facilities. We also saw a requirement that in order for transit agencies to be eligible for any of the grant programs, that agencies must maintain their current sales tax authority. Another thing, which I believe is in the prior slide, not here specifically, but we also saw specific language to prohibit